Keanu Reeves rescues toddler wandering alone in Las Vegas, then learns a shocking truth. Before starting the video, tell us where from you are watching this video. Please like and subscribe our channel. Hit the bell icon for the notification of next video. Las Vegas had its usual heat haze that afternoon, the kind that made the asphalt shimmer and the air feel heavy even in the shade. Tourists buzzed up and down the strip like moths drawn to neon flame, laughing, gambling, forgetting whatever reality they left behind. Keanu Reeves, dressed in jeans, a faded black t-shirt, and a baseball cap low over his face, had just left a charity luncheon at the Wynn. Most celebrities would have been on their way back to a suite, surrounded by handlers, but not Keanu. He liked to walk. He liked to feel real things, even in unreal places. There was something grounding about hearing his own footsteps hit the concrete, something honest in observing the lives of strangers. He wandered past performers in Elvis jumpsuits, magicians doing card tricks for TikTok, and street artists hustling for tips. A wave of music from a nearby casino pulsed in the background, blending into the ambient roar of city life. But then, just past the crowd near a crosswalk, something pulled at his attention. Not a scream. Not a shout. Just stillness. A toddler. Maybe two and a half. No shoes. Wearing a pink pajama set with faded cartoon bunnies. Her curly hair was tangled, her face smudged with dirt, and her little arms wrapped tightly around a small stuffed animal that looked like it had seen too many sad nights. She was walking alone straight toward the curb of a busy intersection. People glanced, looked confused, but no one moved. Some thought it was a prank, part of a social experiment. Others assumed someone nearby must be watching her. But Keanu didn't assume. He jogged over, slowing only when he got close, careful not to startle her. She looked up at him with big, brown eyes, scared, but not crying. It hit him like a gut punch. This child had seen too much. She wasn't lost. She was surviving. Hey sweetheart," he said softly, kneeling down to her level. "Where's your mommy, huh?" No answer. Just a tighter grip on the stuffed bunny. Keanu looked around. Nothing. No parent, no babysitter, no one even looking remotely concerned. He gently scooped her into his arms, her tiny body flinching at first. She smelled like sweat and old motel sheets. He held her close and pulled out his phone, calling 911. "I just found a child alone on Las Vegas Boulevard near Flamingo. No guardian in sight. She's about to. She's not talking. She's scared. Please send someone now." He stayed on the line, giving details. A few people had begun filming him, recognizing who he was. But Keanu didn't care. He turned his back on the cameras and focused on the girl. She hadn't said a word. Her head was resting against his chest now, breathing fast and shallow. The paramedics came first, followed by 2 patrol cars. Keanu refused to hand her off until they reassured him they would take her straight to the hospital. He climbed into the ambulance, ignoring the officer's protest, and rode with her. Her name? Unknown. No ID. Nothing in her pockets. The only thing she had in the world was that filthy bunny doll. At the hospital, they ran tests. She wasn't physically injured, no broken bones or internal trauma, but she was clearly malnourished and dehydrated. And she didn't speak. Not even to cry. The social worker mentioned trauma-induced mutism. Common in children who've experienced severe fear or abuse. When Keanu asked if anyone had come forward to report a missing child, the answer was no. The idea that a child could go missing in broad daylight, in the middle of Las Vegas, and not one soul notice, it unsettled him more than he could say. They were about to move her to Child Protective Services when Keanu stepped in. "Wait. Can I stay with her a little longer?" he asked. The nurse hesitated, then nodded. He sat beside her bed, holding her tiny hand. A moment later, a young nurse in blue scrubs slipped into the room. She pretended to adjust the four-line, then suddenly handed Keanu a folded piece of paper. She didn't say a word before leaving. He opened the note. "Be careful. People are watching." He stared at the words. His heart pounded harder now, not with panic, but a different kind of pressure. He looked at the girl again. She was looking at him too now, for the first time, like she trusted him. And deep down, he knew. This wasn't a simple case of a lost child. This wasn't random. She had run away from something. Or someone. And Keanu had just stepped into the middle of it. His body lay still on the edge of a stiff hospital room couch, but his mind ran endless laps around one question: where did that little girl come from, and why did nobody seem to care? Outside the window, the glow of Las Vegas never dimmed, but in this quiet corner of the pediatric wing, it felt like another world. The girl, still nameless, still silent, slept under warm blankets with her stuffed bunny clutched tightly in one arm. A nurse had told Keanu she hadn't made a single sound since arriving. Not a word, not a cry. Just silence. As if her voice had been stolen along with her safety. By morning, hospital staff had begun calling her Baby Jane. It wasn't official, just something they said to identify her. The police hadn't found any reports of a missing child that matched her description. No security footage from the intersection showed who she'd been with before. She had appeared out of nowhere. The detective on the case, a tall man with a buzz cut and a clipboard full of forms, was polite but disinterested. He told Keanu that if no one came forward, the child would be processed and placed in the care of Child Protective Services. A temporary foster home, a case file, a court date. Just another kid in the system. But something inside Keanu wouldn't let him accept that. He asked if he could stay with her just until she was placed. The hospital agreed, under strict supervision. He bought her clean clothes, small socks, and a soft blanket from the gift shop. He sat with her through lunch, even though she only poked at the food. When a social worker arrived that afternoon, Keanu's gut twisted. She was friendly, professional, used to dealing with chaos. But to him, she represented a conveyor belt that would soon move this child into the unknown. He watched her kneel down and offer the girl a sticker. The toddler didn't respond. She just stared at Keanu, eyes wide, silently pleading. She trusted no one else. Before the woman left, she said, "It's admirable, what you're doing. But you can't stay involved. It's better for the child if she doesn't form an attachment." Keanu didn't argue. But he didn't agree either. He walked out of the room to clear his head. As he passed by the nurse's station, the young nurse from the night before caught his eye. She motioned for him to follow her to the supply room. When the door shut behind them, her tone dropped from gentle to serious. "You shouldn't have gotten involved," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That note I gave you, it wasn't paranoia. I meant it." Keanu crossed his arms. "Tell me what you know." The nurse hesitated, looking toward the hallway. "I can't say much. But you should know that this isn't the first time a child has shown up like this. No ID, no history, no missing persons report. It's happened 3 times in the past year. All girls. All under 5. All silent." His eyes narrowed. "And the cops?" She shook her head. "They investigate, but nothing ever comes of it. The kids are shuffled into the system and vanish. I looked one of them up later, her foster family never existed. The file was scrubbed." Keanu's heart dropped. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're the only person who seems to give a damn. And maybe, just maybe, you have the kind of spotlight that could make people pay attention." Keanu left the supply room with more questions than answers. He returned to the hospital room, sat beside the toddler, and studied her tiny face. What kind of world abandons a child this way? What kind of evil moves in silence, cloaked in legal paperwork and shadows? That night, he went home to his hotel. He stood at the window, looking out at the lights of Vegas, the illusion of entertainment and safety. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Stop digging. Let it go." He stared at the words, then deleted the message. He turned off his phone and sat down on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. He couldn't stop now. The next morning, Keanu returned to the hospital. The girl was awake, sitting up in bed, playing with her bunny. A nurse told him she had passed a cognitive test, but still hadn't spoken. When she saw Keanu, her face lit up not with joy, but with recognition. Like he was the only familiar thing in a world she didn't understand. He sat beside her, took her hand gently, and whispered, "I'm not going anywhere, okay?" Later that day, an officer arrived to transport the girl to a foster care facility. When they tried to take her hand, she screamed. Loud, piercing, heartbreaking. Her first sound since being found. Keanu froze. The officer looked uncomfortable. "She can't stay here," he said flatly. "We have procedures." Keanu stepped forward. "Then I want to file for emergency temporary custody." The officer blinked. "You're serious?" "I have the resources. I have lawyers. And I'm not letting her vanish." It wasn't instant. But by that evening, his team had filed the proper documents, and Keanu was granted temporary guardianship. The girl who still hadn't said her name left the hospital in Keanu's arms, wrapped in the new blanket he'd bought her. She leaned into his chest, holding the bunny tight. As they walked through the hospital doors, a black SUV sat across the street. Its engine idled. The windows were tinted too dark to see inside. Keanu saw it. And he knew. They were being watched. Keanu barely slept that night. He kept pacing the living room with the toddler asleep in his arms, her cheek pressed to his chest like she'd finally found the safest place in the world. But the word she had whispered kept echoing in his mind, "Daddy." It wasn't just a fluke or some random cry. It had meaning, weight, a memory tucked inside a single word. For days she had barely uttered a sound, but now, that small fragile voice had opened the door to something far deeper. Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something right in front of him. And that the answer wasn't just in some file or hidden warehouse, but inside the child herself. Morning came, and with it, a phone call from Marcus. His voice was low, urgent, stripped of any of the calm he normally carried. "Keanu, we have a problem. There's a hit out on you." Keanu stood still, unmoving, staring out the window as sunlight spilled across the rug. "What do you mean, a hit?" "Not the kind you're thinking," Marcus said. "They're trying to discredit you. Your name's being dragged through some backroom digital boards. They're building a false narrative. That you kidnapped her. That you're unstable. That you fabricated the whole thing for attention. I've seen it happen. Smear campaigns, they use them to destroy reputations before the truth can breathe." Keanu exhaled slowly, his jaw clenched, his mind racing. "So they're coming after me, legally, publicly. Not just in the shadows." "Exactly," Marcus replied. "Which means the clock just sped up. We need to act fast. Before they make you look like the villain." Keanu hung up and turned to the child, who was now awake and staring at him with those solemn eyes, as if she understood every word. "Don't worry," he whispered. "I won't let them take you. No matter what." That afternoon, Keanu and Marcus met in an abandoned sound stage on the outskirts of town. It was dusty, cold, and private. There, Marcus laid out everything he had found: dozens of kids tied to forged identities, fake foster homes that never existed, and one untraceable corporation that connected them all. It was called Novaplex, a shell organization buried beneath layers of offshore accounts and front companies. On the surface, it looked like a biotech firm on paper, nothing more than a research contractor. But under the surface, they were experimenting on human behavior, especially in children. Conditioning, isolation, identity erasure. And the worst part, they had government ties. Quiet contracts with defense and intelligence agencies. This is why they wanted her back so badly, Marcus said grimly. She wasn't just a number. She was a key subject. Probably one of their most valuable. Keanu stared at the files, his stomach twisted in a knot. And the parents? Mostly eliminated from the picture. Either paid off, threatened, or vanished, Marcus replied. She may have been taken young enough that she never knew anyone else but them. But that one word daddy means someone, somewhere, fought for her once. Keanu felt fire rise in his chest. All the years he had spent telling stories on screen about heroes and villains, but now, he was living one. And the stakes weren't fiction. They were flesh and blood, staring up at him with wide, innocent eyes. The child reached out for his hand, gripping it tightly. It was then Keanu made the call. If Novaplex was protected by red tape and silent partners, then the only thing strong enough to fight back was the light. Truth. Exposure. The next day, Keanu sat down for a one-on-one live interview with one of the biggest news anchors in the country. No agents. No publicists. Just him and the truth. He told the world everything: how he had found her, what he'd discovered, the files, the threats. He didn't name names, but he said enough. Enough to ignite a firestorm. Within hours, hashtags were trending. Hashtag Keanu Truth, hashtag Save the Children, hashtag Who is she? And then something happened no one saw coming. A woman stepped forward. Her face was tired, her hands shaking, but her voice was steel. She claimed to be the toddler's mother. She had lost her daughter during what was supposed to be a protective custody arrangement. She had fought in court, begged for answers, but her records were wiped, and she was deemed unstable. No one listened. No one helped. Until now. Keanu flew her to Las Vegas himself. When the woman walked into the safe house and saw the child, her knees gave out. Tears flowed freely. The girl hesitated, then walked toward her slowly, one foot in front of the other. When she got close enough, she raised a hand, gently touched the woman's face, and said in a whisper, "Mommy." The room broke. Everyone watching felt it. The child collapsed into her mother's arms. And for the first time since this nightmare began, the silence shattered into sobs, healing ones. Keanu stood in the corner, tears in his own eyes, knowing something sacred had just been restored. But deep down, he also knew this wasn't over. Novaplex would come harder now. The truth had surfaced. But the war for justice was just beginning. For the next few days, Keanu kept a low profile. He cancelled a press event and avoided the usual paparazzi haunts. Instead of red carpets and rehearsals, his life now revolved around nap schedules, cartoons, and long quiet walks with a toddler who still hadn't spoken a word. She seemed more at peace in his presence, and though her silence remained, her eyes began to soften. She'd occasionally smile when he gave her a crayon or gently brushed her hair. But beneath the calm, Keanu felt a storm building. The black SUV had followed them more than once. Once parked outside a coffee shop. Once idling across from the Airbnb he had rented to keep her away from the chaos of hotel lobbies. Whoever was watching them wasn't trying to hide it. One night, he sat in the kitchen long after she'd fallen asleep. The bunny was tucked under her arm, her breathing light and rhythmic. Keanu stared at the note the nurse had handed him that first night. It was a simple warning scribbled in shaky handwriting, but the weight of it had only grown heavier. Something bigger was at play, something cold, calculated, and far more dangerous than he first imagined. He knew that keeping her safe was no longer just a matter of custody, it was a matter of survival. He made some calls, quiet ones, to people he trusted. A retired FBI agent named Marcus, someone he'd once met on a film set that had hired real agents as consultants, agreed to fly into Vegas. Within 24 hours, Marcus was sitting in Keanu's kitchen with files spread across the table and a concerned expression on his weathered face. He listened carefully as Keanu laid out everything: the silence, the hospital nurse, the SUV, the eerie message on his phone. Marcus tapped his fingers slowly. "This sounds like a trafficking operation, Keanu. These kids, they're not just getting lost in the system. They're being taken. Paperwork forged. Case files buried. You found her before she could be processed. That wasn't supposed to happen." Keanu's jaw clenched. "Then who is behind it?" Marcus leaned back, his expression dark. "Could be a private network. Could be someone inside CPS or law enforcement. Could even be medical personnel forging health records. These kinds of groups don't advertise, and they don't leave traces." Keanu looked down the hallway toward the child's room. "We need to find out where she came from. And why she was left alone on that street." Marcus nodded. "I'll dig. But you need to stay visible. If they know you're not scared, if they see media attention around you, they'll back off. These people hate light." That same night, Keanu posted a vague but pointed message on his social media. A photo of him holding the toddler's tiny hand, her bunny dangling from the other, with the caption, "Not all heroes wear capes. Some just need protection. I'm watching. So are you." It went viral within hours. Fans speculated, the media scrambled for answers, and suddenly, the story wasn't a private mystery anymore. It was national conversation. The next morning, Keanu received a package with no return address. Inside was a small flash drive and a single sheet of paper that read, "You want the truth? Open your eyes." Against Marcus's advice, Keanu plugged the drive into a secure, disconnected laptop. What he saw chilled him. Dozens of folders, each labeled with a child's name. Photos. Case files. False foster reports. One folder labeled Subject 7 caught his eye and his breath froze. It was her. The little girl. Dozens of photos taken at different locations. One showed her sleeping in a crib inside what looked like a warehouse. Another showed her being held by a man whose face was blurred out. "This is too organized," Marcus muttered. "This isn't just trafficking. This is experimentation. Controlled environments. Psychological studies. They're testing these kids." Keanu stood, his fists clenched. "And the government?" Marcus didn't answer. "That said enough. They printed everything." Keanu handed a copy to a journalist friend with national reach. But before the story could hit the headlines, the power in the Airbnb cut out. Pitch black. The child screamed for the first time since he found her. A deep, panicked scream that rattled Keanu to his core. He rushed to her room, scooping her up as her body shook violently. The bunny fell to the floor, forgotten. The power flicked back on. In that moment, Keanu knew this was a warning. She curled into him, her fingers clutching his shirt. And then, a whisper barely audible, but real. "Daddy." Keanu froze. It wasn't just a word. It was a memory. A connection. He looked into her eyes, heart racing. "What did you say?" But she had already closed her eyes again, exhausted. Keanu sat there for hours, holding her. It wasn't just about protection anymore. Now it was personal. And the truth he was about to uncover would change everything. The world watched, frozen in disbelief, as the story unfolded in real time. News stations across the country replayed the footage of the toddler calling that woman mommy, while Keanu stood silently in the background, his face full of raw emotion. Social media exploded. Celebrities, politicians, and everyday people flooded timelines with messages of support, outrage, and heartbreak. But Keanu wasn't basking in the spotlight, he was already 2 steps ahead. He knew the moment he spoke out, he painted a target on his back. Not just his, but the mother's too. And the little girl, now reunited with the woman who brought her into this world, was still in danger. The machine they had stood up against wasn't going to crumble overnight. It was vast, hidden, and ruthless. Keanu made arrangements for the mother and daughter to be placed in a secure location under protection. He paid for everything out of pocket, refusing help from studios or foundations. This wasn't a PR campaign, it was personal. Marcus worked day and night, digging deeper into the rabbit hole. Files, witness accounts, even whistleblowers began to come forward. The puzzle pieces started snapping together, and what they revealed was darker than anyone imagined. Novaplex had been involved in experimental behavior modification programs for years. Disguised as foster programs, orphan care initiatives, or juvenile research, they had abducted children under the radar, erased their pasts, and conditioned them through psychological testing. Their endgame? Not just mind control, but manipulation on a mass scale. Keanu stared at the data in horror. What he had stumbled upon wasn't an isolated incident, it was part of a horrifying trend, one that had the fingerprints of powerful institutions smeared all over it. But instead of fear, what Keanu felt now was fury. He had seen what this little girl had survived. He had held her while she slept, heard her cry out in confusion, seen her smile in tiny flickers when she felt safe. That kind of resilience didn't belong to a test subject. It belonged to a hero. Then the threats began. Real ones. Anonymous calls. Strange cars tailing Marcus. A break-in at Keanu's Los Angeles home where nothing was stolen but everything was touched. A message left on his bathroom mirror, scrawled in red, "Stay silent." But Keanu had never been louder. He doubled down, releasing evidence piece by piece to trusted journalists, bypassing traditional media filters. He knew that if he handed it over all at once, the truth might vanish. But if he let it leak slowly, truthfully, it would be impossible to ignore. And the people responded. Protests broke out in front of Novaplex's headquarters. Investigations were launched. Senate hearings were demanded. Someone had lit a match in a dry forest, and now the fire was spreading. One afternoon, as Keanu sat alone in his apartment, the little girl's mother called him. She didn't say much, just a soft thank you that cracked in the middle. Then she handed the phone to the girl. The child said his name, not Daddy, not Sir, but Keanu, clearly, confidently. It was her way of letting him know she remembered. That despite all the pain, all the trauma, she recognized who had pulled her out of the shadows and into the light. Keanu's throat tightened. That one word made every risk, every sleepless night, worth it. Weeks turned into months. Legal walls began to crumble. Arrests were made. Novaplex's funding was frozen. Government officials scrambled to deny involvement, but the documents told a different story. Whistleblowers turned state's evidence, and some of the missing children were found scarred, but alive. And through it all, Keanu never once claimed credit. He didn't do interviews. He didn't take a victory lap. He just kept working quietly, funding legal defense for other parents who had lost children in similar ways, backing new legislation to protect kids in the system, and meeting with survivors in private. The world called him a hero. He didn't care about the label. One chilly evening, Keanu walked through a quiet park, hoodie up, trying to avoid the occasional passerby who recognized him. At the far end of the path, he spotted a familiar figure, a little girl with bright eyes and a pink jacket. She was holding hands with her mother, laughing freely, not a care in the world. When she saw him, she let go of her mother's hand and ran to him full speed. Keanu dropped to one knee just in time to catch her. She threw her arms around his neck and whispered, "I missed you." He hugged her tight, eyes closed, heart full. For the first time in a long while, everything felt right. She pulled back and looked him in the eyes. "You're my guardian angel," she said. Keanu smiled through tears. "No," he replied softly, "you're mine." And as they sat there in the golden light of the setting sun, it wasn't about the past or the battle still ahead. It was about this moment, real, quiet, and powerful. A man who could have turned away, and a child who would never have survived without him.